one that really got to me, is we had to pick up wounded, and this is where we came out, and they were telling me not to come in because it was too hot. And I came in anyhow, and I picked these guys up. They brought them in on stretchers and ponchos and whatever the hell they could carry these guys in. And I took off, and the only way for me to go was straight out over a tree line. And as I was going over the tree line, and I didn't have enough airspeed to turn, so I just had to keep going. And they opened up on us from underneath. You know, I mean, we got no armor in those goddamn things. And they're shooting up to the bottom of the bird, and they're hitting these guys again. And all I can hear is a screaming and a moaning as this is happening. Ugh. And I reach behind and under my helmet and where my collar is, and I'm pulling skin and blood and all kinds of shit from being torn off of these guys and being flung around the inside of the helicopter. It was so gross. Oh my God, I had nightmares on that one. Fuck, that was one of the times we had to land in the river just because it was so messed up in there. And there's bullet holes through the floor, and there was blood running down the whole bottom of the aircraft where it was running down inside. And they had to strip the damn thing down, almost pull the floor out because it was full of blood inside where the ribs are and all the other stuff between the skin panels. That was a terrible day. That was a terrible day. I was surprised we didn't get hit. And a couple came up through the floor between my feet and kept on going. And when we finally got it back and parked the damn thing, I don't know. I must have had 4 or 5 bullet holes in the blades because it was vibrating a little bit on the way back. I go, took some hits in the blades. I hope the thing holds together long enough to get back. It did. I sat down next to the maintenance shack, and the thing was just about ready to die anyhow on the spot. I said, well, good bird. You got us back as far as we needed to go. We always used to joke about flying in an aircraft built by the lowest bidder. But the damn thing was tough, as I've been approached several times in the last few years. Someone will see my bumper sticker or something like that and come up and give me shit for it. You're one of those baby killer. You know what? Step back. It's not 40 years ago, and I will kick your ass. Go away. We were quiet for years and years and years after we got back. And it's only been recently that the guys are starting to open up now. You see things that people normally shouldn't see. You do things that people normally shouldn't do. And when you're 19, 20 years old, you're making decisions that you shouldn't have to make at that point in your life. But emotionally and maturity-wise, you're not in a real good position to be doing that in the first place. Well, I got out of high school, went off to college 1 year in Detroit. And like any other 18-year-old at that point in your life, you're kind of aimless. But yeah, went to college for a year, and for some kind of personal reasons, I said, maybe I'll join the Army. I want to learn how to fly. The Marines, the Navy, the Air Force, you all had to have a 4-year college education to be able to fly for them. And I said, well, that ain't going to work. But the Army said, nah, we'll take a high school graduate. That works for me. So I joined up, and I was kind of sly about it at the time. You had your normal enlistment contract. Well, I just wanted to fly. I don't want to do nothing else. I don't want to drive any tanks. I don't want to shoot any artillery. I don't want to be a grunt. None of that. So I had to put into my contract at the bottom that if I didn't make it through flight school, I get out. The recruiter wasn't too happy about that, but I says, I know you need us. I know you need pilots. So if you want me that bad, this is the way. This is my terms for coming in. Okay, and they wrote it down at the bottom in my enlistment contract that if I didn't make it through flight school, I get to go home. I said, I don't slapping a 60-pound pack through the rice paddies is not for me. I'm not that athletic. And then off to flight school, which lasted 10 months. You spent 4 months or 4 or 5 months in Fort Walters, Texas. It was just outside of a little town called Mineral Wells. And you finish your basic training there for flight school. And then you went off to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and that's where you got transitioned into the turbines, the Hueys, and that type of thing. You had to pass these ridiculous inspections every day, your room, your uniforms, this and that. So it was all set up. You couldn't do anything right, so you never got a weekend pass. You didn't see off post for the first 3 months you were there. Just because you got so many demerits on your inspections, you spent your weekend in the room polishing boots in the floor, and you go flying for the day, and you come back, and your room has just been tossed. Absolutely tossed. Mattresses are upside down, their closets are emptied, and we had one, we called them TAC officers. These are the guys in charge of us. They were usually pilots that came back. They were injured or something like that, and they really weren't instructor material, but they put us in charge of us. And, they'd do things like with shaving cream, and they'd write filthy on your floor. Well, damn, that just screwed up all the wax. So now you got to strip the whole damn floor and start from scratch again. They'd pick up your boots, and they'd look in the nail holes in the heel. You had to brasso the heads of the nails and make them shiny. And if they found a pebble or anything in your boot, no, these things are filthy. More demerits. So you couldn't win. I mean, you had to go through a month of ground school. You didn't even get near a helicopter except when it was on display. And you learned about the mechanics, the engine, flight characteristics, all this other kind of stuff. And after the first month is when you went out to the flight line for the first time, met your instructor. It'd show you the ropes and how things operated, and off you'd flutter. And you're flying along straight and level. He might let you hold the controls for a little while, but for the most part, it was an orientation type of thing. But my first flight was almost my last flight. It's hard to describe what it's like when there's 300 or 400 helicopters in the air at one time. They had several fields, and they had different models of helicopters depending on which field you were at. There would be this model OH-23s. They were Hillers. We had Hughes 269s at another couple of fields. They had Bell 47s, the one with the big bubble on it, at another field. So you've got this many birds in the air at one time, and it gets a little chaotic, but there's a method to the madness. And at the end of the day, you knew where you had to go, and so you'd see a line of helicopters, single file, all flying back to the base. And as you got on short final, one would go left, one would go right. You could land two at a time. So the instructor had it. He was flying it, and I'm sitting there, eyes about this big, going, "This is great. This is great. This is just what I want to do." And all of a sudden, he's slowing this thing down. In retrospect, now I know what he was doing, but he was slowing it down and jamming on the brakes, you might say, because another bird came in and cut us out of line. I mean, these lines were 3, 4, 5 miles long, single file. And of course, when we back up, everybody else is doing the same thing. And he's cursing this guy out. He's going to get his tail numbers, and we get on the ground. That guy's going to get his ass reamed pretty good. And what had cut us out was the Hughes 269. We used to call it the Mattel Messerschmitt. It was just a little bitty helicopter. And so we're behind him, and about 30 seconds later, maybe not even that long, another one came in. It was one of the Bell 47s with the big bubble, and they got the fuel tanks behind the cockpit. And the 269 was flying in front of us like this. The Bell 47 came in like this. This guy obviously isn't seeing behind him. This guy here, he's in a blind spot, doesn't see him. He comes in, the main rotor of this guy hits the fuel tanks of this guy. He explodes. Kaboom! big orange flaming fireball. This guy loses his main rotor, and he just digs a big hole about 100 yards behind the local Holiday Inn. Killed him too. And I'm sitting there on my very first flight, seeing all this happening, and I'm going. My attitude went from "Wow, this is cool" to "This is bullshit." And all of a sudden, it became real clear how dangerous what it was we were doing. I just saw two guys get killed right in front of me, and man, we got on the ground, and I'm stomping around, and I'm going, "This is bullshit. I'm done. I don't want nothing to do with this anymore." And I was carrying on pretty good. I was kind of in shock at this point. I didn't give a shit if you were a captain or a sergeant or a colonel. I'd tell you exactly what I think at that moment. And I think it took my instructor and the flight commander, or whatever you want to call him, quite a long time sitting down with me that day, getting me calmed down, talking me into changing my attitude a little bit, you might say, and sticking with the program. Because at that point, I was done. I had it. But they talked me into it, and I stuck it out, and went through more flight training, and we lost a couple more guys. Flight training it could be dangerous because we're all new at this, and that's when the mistakes get made. We had what they call confined areas you had to practice in. It would be a clearing in a big circle of trees. And there was more than enough room to get in and get out if you were careful, and that's how you did it. And as he was coming out, his engine caught fire. And that particular model, you have 8 fan belts that go from the engine to the transmission. If the engine quits, the thing will freewheel, and you can get it back on the ground. They call it auto rotation. When it caught fire, it melted the fan belts and locked the transmission up. So there was nothing he could do. He hit the ground and he was dead too. So we lost at least 1 or 2 guys while we're going through flight training, just for my own group. I have no idea where these guys were from that got killed in front of me. They were both solo students, so I have no idea at all. But that was quite an experience. It sobered me up. I feel sorry for the guys that it happened to, but it sure did wake me up and forced me to concentrate and understand that this is serious business. This isn't college and high school or anything like that. The stakes are much, much higher. And with that in mind, I became a lot more serious student at that point, and I became an infomaniac. Anything that came my way, I was trying to suck it up like a sponge so I remember and use it to my advantage. But that day was just awful. It was more or less, you better get your shit together and pay attention because this is how it is. And I went to sleep. I mean, you can't cry over spilt milk. It's already happened. These guys are dead. I'm still here. And if I don't want to end up like them, then I got to get serious here. It had been driven home just what the risks really were. Whereas before it was all, it's like going to war. You don't know what it's like until you go there. You know, you can have all these preconceived notions of it. But once you get into this shit, that's when you go, oh my God, this is worse than I thought. I always had kind of a weird attitude. It was almost like it wasn't happening to me, or I was having an out-of-body type of thing watching this happening and going, this is surreal. This can't be reality, but it really is. It was kind of daunting or overwhelming at the same time, because now you're no longer under the auspices of your instructor. Now it's all on you. That's quite a response. It's like the first solo, after you've been learning how to hover and this, that, and the other, and you come in for a landing, and all of a sudden your instructor climbs out and says, you're on your own. Holy shit. Wow. I got to go up by myself. I hope I was paying enough attention. And that's when all the self-doubts come in, you go, oh my God, if I screw up, there's nobody sitting next to me to take over the controls and keep us alive. The fact that I actually got through flight school and earned my bars and earned my wings meant a lot more to me than graduating high school or going through anything else, because this is something that was special. My parents came down to Alabama for the ceremonies because that's where we held it. And I was cocky. I was like 19 or 20 years old. And like I said, I was reincarnation of Eddie Rickenbacker as far as I was concerned. And that's kind of how it was when you graduate. You're happy and you're proud, but you're also apprehensive as hell because now you know things are really going to get serious because they're going to send you off someplace where you're going to get shot at. And they used to have a saying, you learn the basics in flight school, but you learn how to fly when you went to Vietnam. Because that's when the shit hit the fan, you made that aircraft do things that sometimes it really wasn't designed to do. I was waiting to get shot. When we were coming in for a landing, the pilot came on the intercom and was telling us, we're coming into Saigon or Tan Son Nhut or wherever the hell it was we landed. And he says, now if in the event that after we land, there's a mortar or rocket attack, as you come down the stairs, you'll see bunkers off to the left-hand side. Immediately head for those until the all clear sounds. Oh my God! What a briefing that is as you're coming in for a landing. Of course, I was pretty hammered as it was because I had smuggled a bottle on board. So the three of us sitting in the row, we were pretty juiced by the time we got there. But when that plane landed and after that briefing, and they opened the door, and that tropical air hits you like a wall. It's like walking into a furnace. But I tell you what, I stuck my head out the door, and I felt like I felt like I was in the sniper scope of probably about 20 VC. And I wouldn't have surprised me one damn bit if someone had shot me at that point because I was expecting that to happen, but we didn't. We went down the stairs and carried our crap to the terminal and checked in, and off we went to the transient barracks, and it was all very anticlimactic. None of that's going on. I mean, yeah, shit, you got the Vietnamese people running around there in the taxi cabs and the cars and the rickshaws and the ground crews, and everything's happening like a normal airport. And you kind of go, oh, this isn't what I was expecting. I kind of went, whew, good. I'm glad. Ain't nothing going on. We just get off this airplane and just carry on with our lives. And I don't have to do anything stupid or radical here to try to save my skin. So yeah, the anticlimactic part was there, but I was happy that it was that way. I didn't want any excitement. I was feeling kind of low at that point in the transient barracks because I can remember like it was yesterday almost. I'm laying there in the dark. It's New Year's Eve. And I'm thinking, all my friends back home are partying up a storm for New Year's Eve. And look where I am. Grungy, stinky, smelly army barracks, Vietnam. This is bullshit. I want to be back home with my friends. I don't like this. So, we stuck around there for a couple of days. And then the orders came down and they divvied you up and told you where you had to go. And I'm not even quite sure how I got there anymore. It was kind of a blur because you were being issued your equipment, your helmets and flight suits and all this other nonsense, and checking in, getting shots if you needed them. And things happen kind of weird at that point. You're just overwhelmed by the entire situation. You're supposedly in a war, but there's so much normal stuff going on around you, like normal, and it just didn't click. I always had a problem with that the whole time I was there. I understand the concept of war, and I understand the objective, which is to nail the other guy, and but I always kind of took it personal when I got shot at, because I'm thinking to myself, I wasn't doing nothing to you. What the hell are you shooting at me for? I don't want to be here any more than you want me to be here. Leave me alone, and when the time is up, I'll go home and leave you guys, to your own. And that's how my attitude was. And I took it personal when I got shot at. I got pissed because I'm not bothering you. I had a problem understanding, getting in the right frame of mind for this. And, you're all John Waynes at the time. And you take chances. Took a lot of chances.
Your first flight in Vietnam?
It was different from a flight school one. Because now I got a 45 on my hip and I'm wearing armor plate and I've got a survival vest on. You get all these little cues before you even get near the aircraft that this is going to be a whole new situation. And your first flight was generally, if they could, would be an orientation. You go with some guy that's been there for a while, one of the aircraft commanders, and they'd fly around the area of operations and they'd show you this and they'd show you that. And this hilltop here is LZ English, and this little fire support base is something else, and you're going, yeah, okay, sure, right, mm-hmm, and you fly on. If you had asked me to turn around and go back and find that place, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I didn't have a clue. So you spend your first month or two at least flying as co-pilot to some guy that's been there for a while, learning the ropes and who does what and where to whom and who to watch out for and where areas you shouldn't really go if you don't have to, and just learning the job. If you live long enough to do that, then you pretty well got it together. And that's when the older guys would show you tricks that you could do with that helicopter that they didn't teach you in flight school. The one that I remember the most was the Huey had a problem with right quartering tailwinds. And you'd be flying like this and the wind is going like this. You come in for a landing. Sometimes you don't have any choice but to land downwind because you're on top of a mountain and there's just no way else to get in there. So you'd land, and sometimes you couldn't even land. You'd have one skid sitting on the ground and the other hanging out over 1,000 feet down. And if the wind was just right, if you want to call it right, you'd run out of pedal that would keep you straight. And the damn thing would start to get away from you and start to spin and rotate. And if you recognize what was going on soon enough, you just basically dumped it and fell off the side of the mountain and tried to get some airspeed up so that you could get actually flying again and then come around and try it again. And that was the one maneuver they taught me that saved my ass a couple of times because I recognized what was happening. If these guys hadn't taken me under their wing and shown me what was going on, chances are pretty good I probably would have crashed and killed myself and everybody on board. But that was the type of thing that you learned. Just this aircraft has got certain characteristics and capabilities, and if you exceed them, then you're in deep shit real fast. Things happen way too quick. I remember when I came back, I was an instructor, and I was teaching my guys in flight school these things. Got myself in trouble a couple of times because I was deviating from their syllabus, and I was a little bit of a rebel at the time. I said, I don't give a shit. It saved me, and if I can pass this information on to these guys, who the hell knows? And as it worked out, it must have been about, I don't know, 7, 8 years later, and I was in the New York National Guard, and there's another Huey came in from another unit someplace. Turns out one of the pilots used to be one of my students. And he told me, he said, remember you got your ass in trouble for blah, blah, blah? And I said, yeah. He said, well, I ran into that situation while I was over there. If you hadn't shown me that, we'd be all dead. So I went, good. It was worth the ass chewing. You're already flying combat missions, even on your very first day in some instances. It's just that you're flying as co-pilot. The guy with the experience is doing most of the flying. So you got experience and training all at the same time. And you always wanted to log pilot and command time as opposed to co-pilot time. So we'd switch off. Both of us pretty much. The older guy, the one more experienced, generally, what's the word I'm looking for? He held precedence, you might say. But your opinions in most cases also counted. So if it became a matter of should we do this or should we do that, it became a little discussion between the two pilots as to the best way of doing something. But we'd say we'd be up for 4 hours. Okay, I'd log 2 hours co-pilot, 2 hours pilot command, and he'd do the same thing. So we both split the time evenly. We'd be flying all day, so 6, 8, 10-hour days were the norm. A lot of the time was spent sitting on the ground waiting for something to happen. You fly out to an outpost or something like that, and you're supposed to load up, and they weren't ready for you. Oh, well, shit. Okay, you shut it off, and you wait until whoever's on the ground gets off their ass and does what you're supposed to be doing. And once they loaded you up or whatever, okay, then you fired the thing up and off you went to wherever your next stop was. In some instances, if they weren't ready, you basically said, "Well, the hell with you. We're going on to our next stop. We'll check in with you in an hour or two and see if you got your shit together yet." And that's kind of how that went. But it became it was, I hate to say it, almost like a routine. And like I said, my attitude was, I'm here and this is supposed to be fun. I'm flying. I'm doing what I want to do. And that's kind of how it really was for most of us. You realized the element of danger was there, but you had a love of flying at the same time. So it became, in my case, I was always in a constant state of amazement that they actually trust me with a $750,000 helicopter, and I can fly around and land here and land there and do this and do that, and nobody else. This is great. I like this. And then you had your radio direction finders. Outside of most airfields, they'll have a beacon on a certain frequency, and your needle would point to it. So if you're going from point A to point B, you just tune in that beacon if you were in range, and you just follow the needle in to you without having to look at maps and this, that, and the other. We turned on Armed Forces radio, and we'd listen to rock and roll through our headphones. Once we knew the area pretty good, didn't need any beacons. So it'll just be flying along, listening to the Rolling Stones or whatever the heck was the Creed and Clearwater at the time, and just rocking out. And as you got closer to the airfield, okay, you shut the tunes off and put the tower frequencies back on and start talking to the people on the ground and start to get serious again. But for the most part, I was a boredom punctuated by moments of terror. Our sole purpose in life was to support the guys on the ground. So you didn't really think too much about the dangers involved. You were aware that they were happening, but you kept your fingers crossed and hoped that they weren't very good shots, and you went in and tried to take care of business anyhow. It depended what was going on. If it was just dropping off supplies or this, that, and the other, hell with you. I'm gonna stay 10 miles out. You give me a call on a radio when things have cleared up, and I'll come and bring you stuff. But if there was wounded or something like that, well, the parameters have changed. And now you got guys on the ground that are depending on somebody coming in to get them, and you went in. I mean, I got told a couple of times by the radio operator, back off. They already warned the medevacs out because they're unarmed, and they told everybody the same thing. It's too hot down here. Don't come in. And I'm telling them, go stick it up your ass because I'm not leaving until I got you wounded on board, and then I'll leave. So you went in and did it. Took your chances. I got lucky. I didn't get hit. Well, the aircraft got plenty of hits, but I managed to somehow get through it. Got shot a couple of times, but I was wearing armor plate, so it didn't do any permanent damage except in my pride and the bruises. But never really got shot. I'm thinking of how bad I feel for those guys. I mean, okay, it is funny. The grunts wouldn't have done my job for nothing. And I wouldn't have done theirs either. You had to have a certain mindset to do this. And the way they thought was, I get off this bird, I could jump in the bushes, and they got to find me. You guys make all this racket. You're so big. You're nothing but a big-ass target. And I would do your job. And I'm thinking, I would be one of, yeah, I'm a big target, but I could get the hell out of there if I have to, hopefully. Meanwhile, you're stuck down there, hiding in the weeds, trying to stay alive. So I felt bad for the guys. I could see it in their faces when we were going into a hot LZ. Or even, it wouldn't even have to be a hot LZ. Maybe when it's already secured, but they're out in the boonies. And you look at their faces, most of us were 18, 19, maybe 20 years old. And you just look at their faces and you can see that they're scared shitless. I mean, they have no idea what's going to happen in the next 24 hours. Some of them may not come back. And you feel for them. I mean, hell, I drop these guys off, I'm gone. If nobody shoots me down first, and tonight I'm going to be sitting in a club having a beer and sleeping in my comfy bed, waiting for the next day's missions. Unless you were on standby for whatever that night, then you didn't sleep too good because you slept in your uniform. The only thing you didn't have on was your boots. If they called you out for the reaction strike force, then you had to be ready to go like right now. It's funny. You become what you become used to. The situation was pretty grim a lot of times. It smelled bad. There were people out there trying to kill you. You're flying a machine that's inherently dangerous to begin with. You got all these different factors. You get kind of a fatalistic attitude that in my case, I didn't really believe I'd make it back. So it was a matter of not if, it was more or less when. And nobody was more surprised than me when I'd make it back every night. You'd fire the thing up in the morning, and you'd hover out to the takeoff pad, and you're waiting for permission to take off from the tower. And I can remember many times thinking, I wonder if I'm going to see this place again tonight, at the end of the day. I have no idea what's going to go on, what they're going to have you do. A lot of supposedly cold areas you start to come into, and they open up on you with everything but the kitchen sink. Big surprise. Woo. But that was my thoughts in the morning. I just wonder if I'm going to see this place again tonight. And you ran into some stuff one time. We had to come in a valley. There was 3 mountains. There was only one way in and to a turn and one way out. And I had called a radio operator on the ground, and he said everything was fine. Hadn't had contact in a couple of days. Come on in. Okay. Now, normally, you should be ready anyhow, but my door gunner on that side, he was kind of a goofball. So he was just along for the ride and enjoying things and looking around. And as we come in, and we were heavy, and I started to hover, and I did my turn, because you wanted to turn first and then set down, so that when they unloaded you could just get the hell out. And I made my turn, and as I was settling in, they opened up on us from behind. And I could hear all the bullets hitting the fuselage and this type of thing. And I could hear the door gunners and crew chief hollering that they're taking fire. And I'm yelling at them, well, fire back. Don't wait for me. And I heard the door gunner yell that he had been hit. And I'm pulling every bit of power out of that aircraft that I could possibly pull. You have maximum power, they call torque. 50 foot-pounds is maximum. And I remember as we were leaving and wasn't quite a big a hurry, and I started reducing power, I saw that gauge coming back through 70. So I bent things up pretty good on that thing. It was one of those, you really overstressed it. So it was an immediate flight right back to base, land over on the maintenance hangars and put it down and tell the maintenance chief that I over-torqued the airplane. And he'd kind of look at you, but he knew why, so he didn't catch any shit for it. But still, you didn't want to break an aircraft unnecessarily if you didn't have to. But yeah, I mean, you fall into a routine, and like I said, you kind of divorce yourself from the situation, and go, it won't be me, it'll be somebody else. I'll be lucky. And that's the attitude you had to take, because if you didn't, you wouldn't go out. I mean, you'd be just too damn scared. But you went in anyhow. You could be scared shitless, but you still got to go. And you did it. And you'd see people get shot down or whatever next to you, or blow up or what have you. Couldn't waste any time thinking about them. I mean, gee, that's too bad. But the mission's got to go on. And, you can grieve later, but for now, there ain't nothing you can do for those guys anyhow, so you keep on going. And that's kind of how it was, at least in my case. I don't know I can't speak for anybody else. But like I said, it was so surreal that my brain had a real problem processing the seriousness of the situation most of the time. I had a job to do. I relied on my training, and I kind of pushed the rest of it. I mean, you exercise your cautions. You can only do so much. From that point onwards, it's a crapshoot if you're going to make it or not. For the most part, probably, but there's that little percentage in there that goes, no, you're not. Ah, what the hell? I was never lucky in Vegas. Why should this be any different? So you just kind of ignore it and go on with what you're doing, and hope that heck that you make it and get back to the club that night and have another beer. It's very difficult to describe your attitudes and how you feel in that situation. Had I known then what I know now, I might not have even gone into it, because it turned out that flying helicopters was probably the most dangerous job you could do while you were there. We didn't know that. We just a bunch of young kids and flying along, and it's a rock and roll war. Lovely stuff. Lying bastards. They told us, oh, it won't hurt you. Everything's fine. So we didn't have any respirator gear or anything like that. No protective hazmat suits like we do today. I had the picture. I wish I could remember where it was. I've got it somewhere, probably in the computer, of our spray bird. Usually got that job if you screwed up somewhere along the line and they were pissed off at you, because that stuff stunk so bad, and on the picture I've got, you can see where all the paint's gone on the tail boom, where the spray had hit it and just peeled all the paint right off. But we didn't have all the nice equipment that maybe a crop duster today would have. We had what was, I don't know, 255-gallon drums welded together, and with a pipe sticking out on either end that would face forward into the airstream, and two long booms, one on either side, where the spray would come out. And your normal crop duster today with an airplane, they'll fly down, they'll spray, and they keep on going. We were a little different, because we were a helicopter. You'd spray, come to a stop, turn around, and fly right back and spray some more. So by the end of the day, when you finished all your missions, at least you could write your name in my helmet, in the residue. I mean, we were literally taking baths in this stuff. But they kept telling us, it's okay, it won't hurt you, it's blah, blah, blah. Well, 40-some-odd years down the road, we're finding out that, yeah, it did hurt us. It hurt us badly. That's where I, got my cancer from, and we've got so many that have died already from it.
How many missions would you fly spraying, George?
I probably flew 5 or 6, something like that.
Full day?
All day.
All day.
Oh yeah. Once you got your flying assignment for the day, that was how you spent your day. Unless the airplane broke for some reason, that was your job for the day. I was thinking about how much I didn't want to be doing it, because it smelled so bad. It was oily. It felt like crap when it was on you. Couldn't wait to get back to the end of the day so you could run and take a shower or something, get cleaned up, because it stunk. It was awful. I really wasn't thinking too much about what it was doing to the vegetation or anything like that. That wasn't my concern. They told me what it was supposed to do. Fine, whatever. I don't give a shit. I just don't like doing it because it's so uncomfortable, so stinky, miserable job. I mean, temperatures are 100 degrees in the shade, and it's humid, and you're spraying this gunky stuff, and it's just a miserable experience all damn day. That was my concern, my own personal comfort. To be honest with you, I didn't like it. It was awful stuff. But again, they kept telling us it won't hurt you, so that really wasn't a consideration. We believed them. We didn't have any reason not to believe them. So, all right, yeah, it smells and it's uncomfortable, but it won't hurt us. So you didn't think about that part. You just thought about your own personal comfort at that stage of the game and how yucky this really was. They'd rotate it because it was such a miserable, and we didn't spray every day. Those missions came up maybe once, twice a week at best. A lot of the spraying was already done.